The most antisocial superstar in basketball history has broke his 10-year silence to install a new monarch, giving the NBA the biggest reset in history. Tim Duncan recently went public. Almost everyone has an opinion about Wemby, and essentially declared Wemby to be his current favorite player in the league, praising his uniqueness, but it didn't end there. You are going to miss the biggest takeover in the sport right now if you believe Duncan was merely observing the child from a distance. Officially, there are rumors coming out of the Spurs facility that Tim Duncan just decided to come out of the spotlight in order to personally coach Wemby for the championship game. I assure you that the NBA has never seen anything like this. Never. Everyone is aware that Tim Duncan ignored the NBA as if it didn't exist for the past 10 years. However, in the spring of 2026, he unexpectedly turned up in the front row at the Frost Bank Center to see a 22-year-old French lad smiling broadly as he broke his franchise records. This man despises limelight so much that, in 2016, he simply walked out the back door and went off the grid to play paintball and build vehicles while ignoring everyone. He didn't even give a proper retirement speech. In reality, in 2022, Greg Popovich told a room full of reporters that Duncan had no interest in coaching or being a public figure, thus he was done with basketball forever and would probably never go to another game. Duncan simply wanted to live his life in peace, so Pop essentially stopped attempting to encourage him to attend practices. However, Victor Wembanyama begins to casually surpass Duncan's rookie record in the postseason. And the man who vowed to abstain from the sport is now sitting by the court with a proud expression. According to a huge report by renowned NBA insider Mark Stein, Duncan quietly consented to start regularly visiting the Spurs practice facility in order to play one-on-one against Wemby, impart knowledge, and assist in preparing him for the championship game. Consider the true significance of that in relation to any other superstar in history. As of the last time I looked, no one had come out of retirement just because of LeBron. However, in order to be in Wemby's circle, the most self-disciplined and unneedy champion ever totally changed his retirement lifestyle. This is where things get crazy though. You won't believe how early this entire passing of the torch actually began behind the scenes. Wemby was out at a restaurant having a private dinner with the Spurs Mount Rushmore, including Duncan, David Robinson, and Manu Ginobili, on the very second night following the 2023 draft. Following the dinner, Wemby informed the reporters that in those few hours, he had learned more about the realities of the NBA than he had in his whole life. You know, I probably knew more about the NBA in a few hours than I had in my whole life. Even Manu Ginobili later went on record to support Wemby, stating that the young man is far too mature for a 22-year-old, has the full package, and doesn't require much assistance. There's not much that young man needs. He has everything. He's amazing and so mature for his age. It truly makes you pause and consider what a man like Tim Duncan, who gave up on the sport entirely, understands about this child that the rest of the world is only now beginning to comprehend. Duncan doesn't perform marketing stunts for companies, he doesn't give a damn about social media opinions, and he most surely doesn't require any additional funding or influence from the Spurs organization. Therefore, if he is voluntarily getting up early to work out in a practice gym against a sophomore, it indicates that he has unquestionable potential and that Duncan believes the team's future is in capable hands. The most startling aspect of all of this, though, is that Duncan's return to the facility sends a strong message to all other old school legends that Wembanyama is the real deal, which fundamentally altered how the basketball community views him. Because Duncan was the first to step up, even though having the best power forward in history in your corner is already an absurd advantage. When Chris Paul signed that one-year contract, every NBA fan believed he was merely a band-aid. The media narrative was that he simply wanted to earn a good salary and make a few high-percentage lob passes before riding off into the sunset. However, when you consider the news that is currently seeping straight from the Spurs, that version of the narrative utterly collapses. Spurs insiders claim that even though Chris Paul is no longer under contract, he recently abruptly interrupted their practice in order to personally support Victor Wembanyama during the current finals. Chris Paul casually discussed how easy it is to assist and train this child because his brain already has the processing speed of a supercomputer during a significant interview on June 2nd of this year. Just his mindset, isn't that right? I believe that's the reason he's well liked by all. He doesn't say what everyone believes he should. Because he didn't invest in the effort, he is able to express his true feelings and emotions. I'm not sure you realize how serious this is because, while almost every other NBA veteran is currently enjoying cocktails on a beach in Cabo, a man who has no contractual or financial links to San Antonio is aggressively training for Wemby. But when you consider what all these traditional Hall of Famers learned about Wemby's genuine love for the game, that madness only begins to make sense. Most people assume that a 22-year-old who is making his first real postseason run spends his summer traveling on opulent yachts with pals or playing video games. However, Wembanyama entirely defied that notion by traveling to China for 2 weeks in a row to spend time alone inside the Shaolin Temple. He trained with monks for 14 days to develop his mental discipline and physical equilibrium. But the true mystery began the moment his plane landed back in the United States. He scheduled a number of private, unlisted gym sessions with Kevin Garnett and Hakeem Olajuwon without even bothering to return home to unpack his baggage. Try to comprehend what a young player who hasn't even completed his 3rd season in the league is doing in private. He is methodically collecting the cheat codes from the most vicious athletes in history. Before he was even legally old enough to hire a car, Wembanyama set out to find legendary excellence across 3 different countries, whereas even the GOAT, Michael Jordan, had to rely entirely on whatever employees his front office felt like recruiting. The Wemby has become into the player he is because of this degree of psychotic preparation. The incredible twist in all of this is that he isn't being mentored by the Avengers lineup of superstars because they think he's a great kid to spend out with or because they want to be kind. They want to make sure they are the ones who gave him the keys to the kingdom because they know that an unparalleled storm is going to hit the sport. In order to give this child their secret blueprints, every single generation of basketball royalty is violating league protocol. This enormous network of mentors is colliding with the year Tim Duncan won his first ring, as you can see by watching how this postseason is unfolding. It goes beyond the ring as well. It truly seems as though the league's scriptwriters simply copied and pasted Tim Duncan's file when you look at the actual records of the 1999 NBA Finals and superimpose them on top of this 2026 campaign. Tim Duncan, then 22 years old, marched into the NBA Finals in 1999 to play the New York Knicks on behalf of San Antonio. And now, a 22-year-old Victor Wembanyama is looking down the very same New York team while standing on the same court in the same team uniform. Consider how awful that is historically for the Knicks fan base, who actually had to wait over 30 years to return to the largest basketball platform, only to have another 7-foot beast waiting to crush their life at the finish line. However, what really makes this strange is that it's not simply a strange historical happenstance or some random trivia that your casual acquaintances discuss in group chats. Rather, it's the individual box scores that turn this whole thing from a neat plot to an utter simulation. Tim Duncan averaged 23 points, 11 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game while shooting 51% from the field during his epic 1999 championship run. Wembanyama is currently averaging 23 in the 2026 playoff leaderboard. 10 points, 2 points, 3 and 8 rebounds, 5 blocks with a 51% accuracy rate. The teams they had to overcome to get here make it even more bizarre that they are displaying the identical stat line across multiple eras. They both had to deal with a very physically demanding Minnesota front court. They each had to overcome Portland and methodically eliminate the most anticipated opponent big man of their generation. Wemby just spent the Western Conference Finals utterly destroying Chet Holmgren, and Duncan had to smash bodies with a peak Shaq. You should listen to what Spurs icon Sean Elliott recently said since, from his point of view, the entire situation is turned into a nightmare film for the rest of the league. Elliott publicly declared that Wemby is still in the early stages of his development and hasn't even started to realize his full potential, meaning he is far from reaching his ideal form. Take a moment to consider that, because the rest of the NBA is in serious trouble if a young player performing at what appears to be 40% of his potential is already matching a prime Hall of Famer stat for stat on a championship run. Every time Tim Duncan watches from his front row position, he is terrified by the same reality. He is witnessing a player who has the potential to absolutely obliterate basketball history before he even reaches the age of 25, not just a fantastic sophomore. Duncan is in charge of the physical layout in the gym, but the mentorship behind the scenes has abruptly changed from simple court positioning to a very emotional operation because of that terrible ceiling. In fact, The voice that is most important to this voyage is coming to him from the complete shadows. Everyone believes that Greg Popovich is totally immune to the everyday strain of this fierce playoff run, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Many people are unaware that Greg Popovich is actually conducting a comprehensive NBA Finals workshop using standard text messages while recuperating from a life-threatening medical situation away from the squad. Pop's relationship with Victor Wembanyama has developed into the most emotional coaching dynamic we have ever witnessed in modern sports, despite the media's assumption that the Spurs would entirely collapse the moment he had to step back from the sidelines. During a recent post-game press conference, Wemby casually revealed a huge detail. He talks to Pop every day, both before and after games, whether it's through a fast text message or a late-night phone call. Popovich is continuously messaging Wemby to take his time, play off 2 feet, and quit hurrying his reads against the New York defense while avidly observing every little micro-movement from his couch. It's absurd to consider that Pop, who spent 20 years coaching Tim Duncan to 5 different titles, is now using a smartphone screen to plan a brand new dynasty. However, you won't believe the real message that appeared on Wembanyama's phone right after they finished the first game of these finals. Popovich fully eschewed the coddling that most coaches would do to preserve a 22-year-old kid's confidence on the greatest stage of his life. Wemby candidly told reporters that Pop sent him a harsh reality check via text, stating clearly that he is far superior to what he portrayed on screen and that he performed like complete rubbish in the major roles. You just don't see that kind of traditional, rugged love in the soft NBA of today. It also explains why this young man views Popovich more as a legend than a team coach. Wemby was so obviously emotional that he could hardly speak at the platform after the Spurs won the Western Conference Finals. He informed the media in the room that Pop has more basketball experience than nearly anyone alive, that he faces real-life challenges behind the scenes that the average person cannot even begin to understand, and that calling him was the first thing he had to do before celebrating. The entire situation bears a striking resemblance to Phil Jackson's previous collaboration with Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, but the stakes are much higher in this instance. This raises the question of how he is managing this level of strain. Wembanyama was asked directly by a reporter what it's like to strive to win a ring at the age of 22 while carrying the expectations of a 5-time champion like Tim Duncan. And he said this while staring directly into the camera. "I wouldn't advise waiting. No, it feels secure, in my opinion. It seems as though many hands are waiting to catch you if you trip." He brought the same attitude and enthusiasm to a meeting with Nike officials a year ago. This child is so calm and modest during his post-game interviews that everyone on Twitter loves to make fun of him. However, it's all a huge act. He possesses the same insane, even psychotic confidence behind closed doors that made Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan complete devils. A year before he even sniffed a playoff game, Wemby sat across from Nike's top executives, looked them in the eye, and told them straight out that he would not give basketball a say in who would be the league's future face. It takes complete insanity to say something so haughty before you've even won a playoff series. It is similar to the enthusiasm of Michael Jordan or Larry Bird in the 1990s, when he would announce his aspirations to take over the world and then go out and drop $50 on someone's head. Considering the other foreign players in the league, this distinction is crucial. I'm not trying to be critical, but Giannis Antetokounmpo and Nikola Jokic both possessed the skill to be the NBA's unquestioned face. However, because Jokic would rather to spend time with his horses in Serbia than go on a press tour, they essentially fled the position. Wemby publicly expresses his desire for the throne and tells the world that no one will be able to stop him. Is it just me, or do you think this is really crazy? Since a youthful Kobe Bryant entered a gym and told veterans he was going to outperform them, this is undoubtedly the most Jordan-coded statement made by a young athlete. Talking trash to Nike executives is entertaining, but what really sets this kid apart from all the players who have come before him is that he backs it up with genuine integrity and character. How should I phrase this? When they see a 7-figure contract, the majority of kids without familial wealth go insane. However, Wemby was living off of a $150,000 income with his French club when he was a youngster, nonchalantly declining millions from enormous cosmetics and soda conglomerates. Additionally, this year, his agent Jeremy Majana stated unequivocally that they would never associate Victor's name with companies like Coca-Cola since he genuinely does not want to murder children. He takes this so seriously that he won't even participate in post-game news conferences until the sponsored Gatorade bottles are taken from the table. He once yelled, "Heck, that isn't the